with that, welcome. Come, whoever you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you're welcome here. No matter how you came here, if you came alone or with others, you are welcome here. No matter whom you love or how you speak or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes, you're welcome here. If you come with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands, you are indeed welcome here. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of New Orleans, a congregation gathered in love since 1833 to practice our liberal faith, engage in spiritual and/or intellectual self-discovery, and work for justice by serving our community and our world. I am Beverly Rainbolt. My pronouns are she, her, and y'all. And I am your worship associate this morning. If you're a visitor, we invite you to raise your hand so that we can welcome you. Do we have any visitors this morning? We'd like to ensure that everyone in attendance can hear everything that's in the service in its entirety. So if you're unable to hear at any time because we're speaking down or not speaking loudly enough, the microphone only does so much, then, raise your hand or do this or this, something to signal us or the greeters, and we'll try to adjust. If anyone of any age would like some activities, fidgets, or toys to help them be more present with the service, you can find what we call our pew packs in the back. They're age appropriate, but you can be any age that you want to this morning. Just after the service, put them back, please. Under the loving guidance of our religious exploration, which we also often call RE, team, we have a kids room set up during Sunday services for play and guided learning, focusing on our shared UU values. So if you want to learn more about our RE programming or where the room is, you can ask any of our RE team members, who I'm going to ask to raise their hands briefly. Here we go over here. And all right, so there's our RE team this morning. So, we're a lay-led congregation, and on Sunday mornings we ask UU ministers, other religious professionals, leaders from social justice organizations, and our own members to be voices of hope, courage, and spiritual or intellectual transformation from our pulpit. This morning, we're excited to have, not a visitor, but our very own new and slightly new member, Siegrid Tuttle. I'm going to let Siegrid, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. Good morning, everyone.
Your pronouns?
I'm Siegrid. My pronouns are they and them, and I'm excited to talk to you all this morning.
And my understanding is that Siegrid grew up UU?
Yeah, I grew up
not
in Unitarian Universalist.
You're just new to FUUNO.
I'm just new here.
All right, thank you, Siegrid. At this time, if you would rise in body or spirit and join me in lighting the chalice of our heritage and join me in particular in reading the words that you will find in your order of worship. And we'll just read this all together. It is the Passover Haggadah. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. And now if you'll remain as you are, please, and we will sing our opening hymn, which is number 121 in the gray hymnal, the fat one. We will build a land. At this point, if the young and the young at heart would come forward for the time for all ages.
Good morning. My name is Mr. Henry, and I've been going to this church for a long, long time because I like the people here and I like the programs. Today at church, we're going to be learning about abolition. That's a big word to say and to understand, but we're going to figure out what it means after reading this book. So the title is Abolition is Love, and it's written and the pictures were drawn by Cyrus Ware and Alana Fricker. Today is August 10th, Prisoners' Justice Day. We are getting ready for the rally, painting signs and working on our banners. I'm learning about abolition. Here's the banners that they're doing. Thanks. Papa says abolition is love. It's a way of dreaming about the future and making sure that we all get to be free. Daddy says abolition means getting rid of prisons and police and systems that hurt our people, like racism and ableism. They both say that abolition is how we are going to get free and what we will do together when we are free. Abolition is like planting a bunch of seeds and watering them to make sure they grow. Abolition means love and care and taking care of each other even when we make mistakes. I'm helping Papa make an accessible park in our community. Making safe spaces for all of us to gather is part of abolition. That's another big word, accessible. What that means is that places that we go to or things that we need to use can be used by anyone, no matter how old they are, how young they are, whatever their abilities or the way they do things. And so you'll notice in the picture here, there's a woman in a wheelchair, and she's able to enjoy the fountains in the wading pool. And the reason why she can do that is that if you see the pool, it's built so that there are no steps, which would be a barrier for her, and she wouldn't be able to go down the steps easily or safely. But because it's built with a gradual ramp, she can go in and enjoy herself like all the other folks. He says that when we make sure we all are planned for, we are all anticipated. That is abolition. Sometimes abolition means learning to work through conflict. My Auntie Jessica came to visit and brought my annoying cousin Curtis with her. We got into a big fight when he spilled my prized collection of rainbow bracelets all over the floor. Auntie Jessica came in and told us we need to solve our conflict together with love. She asked if what happened was a big problem or a little problem. We had to sit down together at the craft table and draw a chart of problems. She sounds like a teacher, doesn't she? Big problems were drawn with big bars colored in red, and were big things that were hard or scary or dangerous. We drew different sized problems from big down to tiny. Okay, now was knocking over the bracelets the biggest problem ever? Was it a medium-sized problem, or was it a little problem? From the other room, Papa chimed in, I know. Shh, Auntie Jessica said, waiting for us to think about it ourselves. Maybe a medium problem because I really like those bracelets, but maybe a little problem because none of them were hurt, I offered. Under his breath, Curtis said, "Seems like a tiny problem to me." We both smiled. Aunt Jessica smiled too. Aunt Jessica helped us make a plan to share our toys and the room. Feeling heard and having our needs met is abolition, and abolition is love. On Sunday, my daddy took me to visit Uncle Mark at the jail. We had to take 3 buses, and I packed some drawings in my backpack to show him. When we got there, we had to be sniffed down by the dogs in the security section before we could walk into the prison. I love seeing Uncle Mark, but I hate going to the jail. Daddy says that in the future, we won't ever have to visit anyone in prison because we will all be free. He says we will respond to conflict, crisis, and harm in better ways. There will be no prisons in the future, Daddy says. Sometimes abolition looks like sharing, and we see pictures of a young girl delivering hot food to an older woman in her neighborhood, and there is a neighborhood car share, etc. My friend Beata's mom lost her job, and they might lose their home too. We are working together as a community to keep the rent paid and to keep them housed until she can find more work. Beata's mom says this is part of abolition too, making sure that we all make it. At Freedom School, we are learning about Black August, which was started by prisoners and is a time to learn about Black justice and liberation and history. And at the suggestion of one of our members, Melissa Gamble, we have celebrated Black August each year, and we have a different talk each Sunday in August about Black liberators and leaders and change makers. My teacher says this is abolition, carrying on the traditions of prisoners and making sure that we, each one, teach one. The Black Panthers had the idea that when you know something, you have a responsibility to pass that knowledge on, to keep it going. I get to hold my own candle at Prisoners' Justice Day this year. Papa and Daddy say I'm old enough to hold the candle flame. Tonight, we will read the names of people who have been hurt by prisons, and we promise to meet every year until all prisoners are free. In the meantime, we work together to water the seeds of abolition. We plant gardens and build community centers. We create housing and programs that support communities. And we turn to each other when problems happen and work through them together. And here we see they're all enjoying a quiet moment at the beach. And it says, we will help each other to get free along the way to abolition, because abolition is love. In the future, we will all be free. Thanks. And I want you to know that I wore this tie special for you kids today. You can see it has drawings of kids from all countries, and they're holding hands and they're chanting being friends together no matter what.
Mr. Andy. Yes, so those of you who came in later, if the children want to go to the kids' room, just follow kind of like Pied Piper. You just follow the other kids. And I will say that there was a change, and that was not We Shall Be Known. That was There Is a Love by E. Norton. And it was beautiful.
That was a fantastic reading of the book. Thank you so much. So this is the time in our service where we take 2 minutes of silence to meditate. And I have this reading for the meditation that's actually taken from an interview with Gil Scott-Heron in 1991 that this service, the title, is based on. And he says, "The revolution will not be televised. That was about the fact that the first change that takes place is in your mind. You have to change your mind before you change the way you live and the way you move. So when we said the revolution will not be televised, we were saying that the thing that's going to change people is something that no one will ever be able to capture on film. It will just be something that you see and all of a sudden you realize, I'm on the wrong page, or I'm on the right page, but I'm on the wrong note. And I've got to get in sync with everyone else to understand what's happening in this country. So let's take these 2 minutes to clear our minds so they might be changed and get in sync with one another here in this room, in this country, in this world."
If you will read with me our responsive reading, which you can find again in the big gray hymnal, numbers 461. We must not be saved. I'll read the regular text, and if you'll respond with the italicized text. Nothing worth doing is completed in our lifetimes. Therefore, we are saved by hope. Nothing true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we are saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. No virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as from our own. Therefore, we are saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness. Blessed be.
Hello, everyone. My voice is going to be a little scratchy because I'm recovering from a cold, but hopefully it makes me sound like cool and wise. Last summer in Baltimore, the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly voted on abolition as faith formation for the CSAI, Congressional Study Action Issue. Congressional Study Action Issue, it's a mouthful, for the next few years. It was put forward by the Congregation of the Larger Fellowship, which does a lot of work connecting people who are incarcerated to Unitarian Universalism and connecting Unitarian Universalists to abolition. Abolition is an old idea. It comes out of the slavery abolition movement, as you might have guessed from the word abolition. After emancipation, W.E.B. Du Bois writes about how slavery isn't actually going to be abolished unless education systems are put into place, unless land is redistributed, unless the economy is changed to a socialist economy, unless society is restructured from an enslavement-based society into an emancipation-based society. The modern abolition movement picks up where his writings left off, looking at how much of the policing, surveillance, and incarceration systems that exist now directly come out of slavery. I mean, for one example, Angola was quite literally a slave plantation that a former Confederate general who was in charge of our jail system in the 1860s bought and turned into a prison, and then immediately turned to convict leasing, which was essentially modernized slavery. So there's these very direct lineages. And now I think this system of incarceration justifies itself in a lot of different ways. It can no longer use this crutch of just fanatical racism. But when you actually dig into the lineages, you're like, wait a second, this all comes from the same place, and we've never even considered trying to do something different. So when we're looking at abolition as faith formation, which is kind of this like nebulous idea, it really asks us, what is the Unitarian Universalist role in abolition? And it really asks us to look at the deeper cultural and ethical organizing around abolition in terms of this idea of faith formation. When I think about that CSAI, I always think about that interview with Gil Scott-Heron. The revolution will not be televised. That was about the fact that the first change that takes place is in your mind. You have to change your mind before you change the way you live and the way you move. As much as Gil Scott-Heron is a genius, that idea comes from this bigger cultural moment of the 1960s, which is about cultural organizing as much as it's about political organizing. People had to become different at a core level in terms of their like fundamental beliefs about the world in order to change things. A professor at NYU once told me that faith is these really big ideas we have about the entire universe and how the world works that we believe based on traditions and everyday practices of those beliefs, not on logical fact. So to let me say that again, faith is these really big ideas we have about the entire universe and how the world works based on tradition and everyday practices of those beliefs, not logical fact. And it made me think about, like, what are my everyday practices? What are my traditions? And what does that tell me about my faith, my beliefs about the world? Unitarian Universalism has always been about re-examining faith, noticing what faith is doing in the world, and then changing it, building something different, building a faith that can liberate everyone, and to really abolish the system of incarceration and policing that we currently live under. We need to work on the level of these deeper beliefs, on the level of faith. And that's what the CSAI calls us to do. And this is something that often gets left out of the abolition conversation, because the carceral system, as an abolitionist and as somebody who taught history in a prison, I've done NOLA to Angola, I've been involved in the Free the Mississippi 5 movement, I've been deeply involved in abolitionist work for the last 5 years. And we're always working on system levels and never really having to work on these deeper beliefs, because the carceral system in the US is so bad. You don't really need to change people's core beliefs to convince them of that. Right? Like, we incarcerate more people than any other country on earth, including China, Iran, and Russia, which are all countries that we call so terribly unfree that we need to invade them to free the people, right? But we incarcerate twice as many people per capita. We incarcerate more people flat than China. China has 2 billion people, guys. It's not hard to convince people that incarceration in the US is messed up. 1/5 of people who are in prison for drug offenses, which are extremely unpopular. We incarcerate more women than any other country in the world, and women's incarceration has increased 200% since the Violence Against Women Act was passed in the 1980s, in large part because women are often arrested in domestic abuse cases. And we could go on, right? It's a clearly bad system, and you don't really need people to change their fundamental beliefs to be well, that person shouldn't be in jail. Most of the issues that we're working on today are pretty easy to get behind. They're freeing people who have been put in jail for their entire lives for things they did as children, right, is one of the big things that we're working on. Or working on solitary confinement, which is considered torture by the UN. But ultimately, we're hoping that we'll move past these obvious things, right? Abolitionists don't just want to improve the system. We want to abolish it. It's in the name. We want to end this system where our response to violence and harm in our communities is to commit violence and harm against someone else, even if they are the perpetrator. Abolition starts with this basic idea that no one deserves to be harmed, which seems like an easy idea. It seems like an easy idea, but think about the worst person. Think about the worst the person you hate most in the world, the person who has harmed you, your family, your loved ones the most. Think about them. What abolition asks us is, do we think that that person deserves to be harmed? Can we give them the grace? Can we say, I want them to be okay and safe? I want them to stop committing harm, but I don't want them to be hurt. Right? And doing harm is wrong, and we know that. and then we think about the people we hate, and it becomes harder to know that fact. But until we buy into that idea and base our response to violence and other social issues on that idea, we can't move on from the cruelty and violence that this nation was founded on. We have to buy into this idea that no one deserves to be harmed. And this idea that some people deserve to be harmed, that if someone wrongs you, they deserve punishment, is foundational, and we kind of constantly practice it. In our everyday lives, I mean, we punish children, right? When they do something wrong, that's how they learn. But we found over time that actually that just teaches kids to lie. I was on a bike ride the other weekend with the Louisiana Bucket Brigade, and we were talking about the German Coast Uprising, where hundreds of extremely brave enslaved people rose up, murdered a few enslavers, and then marched onto New Orleans to try to liberate New Orleans, like Haiti had just been liberated from slavery. The uprising was put down. Many of those people escaped and became Maroons, but the rest were captured, killed, beheaded, and their heads were put on pikes in Jackson Square and along the German coast. And a white man who was on this bike trip with us goes, "Our mistake after the Civil War was that we should have done that to the Confederate soldiers. Right? We should have tortured them like they did to the German Coast Uprising, and done public executions. That's why this country is so messed up." And the person who's leading the trip goes, "But what about 40 acres and a mule?" And I think that really showed me like how much punishment captures and limits our political imagination. Because, of course, keeping basic promises to people who were formerly enslaved in terms of economic reparations and political equality would have really helped our country build an emancipation society, and harsher punishments of the Confederates wouldn't have done anything in terms of actually changing the systems that are committing harm. But it's the easy answer to say these people who did something awful, if we just punished them harder, maybe the world would be different. But it's harder than that, right? Like, we have to undo systems when people are harmed. And we believe in punishment, I think, even when it's counterproductive. A year ago, some undergrads at WVU asked me to talk to them about how to answer this classic abolitionist question, which is, what about rapists and murderers, right? People are like, you want to get rid of jails, but what about rapists and murderers? And they think it's a gotcha, even though arguably those are the crimes that our system deals with worst. So these students came to us and they said, we're talking to people about this. We need case studies of what an abolitionist approach would look like to these really tricky harms. We need case studies. So I brought in the Community Interventions Toolkit, which details community interventions in the instances of rape and domestic violence, which are the most common and most underreported violent crimes in America. And community interventions are proven to be more effective, in large part because victims actually use them, right? These are the most underreported crimes. People don't want to go to the cops for a variety of reasons. If this was a policy speech, I could get into it, but I'm not. And regardless, these were all cases where the victims were not going to go to the police. They had chosen to go to a community intervention and did not want to pursue a punishment approach. And these solutions, these community interventions, they often involve getting male family members or community members to intervene. That's very effective. They're about getting people out of abusive relationships with their children and their pets, getting people to take public accountability for sexual harm in instances of rape. But they don't involve punishments. They can't, that's not what they do. And they're more effective in terms of like literally saving people's lives, helping victims be safe, and preventing future harm. But our students like couldn't accept it. They were like, but we just read about these people doing terrible things and they're not being punished. And we're like, but this is the more effective way to help victims. But they want these people to be punished. And I get it so viscerally. That when we read about someone doing something terrible, we want them to be punished, even sometimes when it could cause more harm to the people we're trying to protect. It's really hard for us to accept solutions that don't involve punishment. And I remembered when I was a child, and like that man talking about the Confederate soldiers, like I wanted US soldiers to be publicly tortured and executed. My mom's family is from Argentina, where a US-backed military dictatorship systemically tortured and killed 30,000 people and dumped their bodies into the Rio de Plata in the 1970s. And so when I looked at what the US was doing in the world, I could not make sense of it. Like, what punishment equals these crimes? How is this country still committing these horrors and then saluting the troops? Like, what would fix this? Like, public executions, torture? What would fix this American exaltation of violence? And my mind, even like as a child, and I think children are often the products of our most closely held beliefs. And as a child, I couldn't think of anything except punishment, really, even though my parents were very much these like pacifists. And then when I was 20, I went to Argentina, and I visited a memorial for the people who had disappeared during the dictatorship, who had been taken. And it was placed between the Rio de Plata and the University of Buenos Aires on purpose, because the University of Buenos Aires was where many of the students who were killed were taken from, and it meant that on breaks, all of these young people were able to go into this park and skateboard and drink mate with their friends and hang out and play music. And a mother, who's now a grandmother of one of these disappeared students, spoke to us. And she said, in the 1970s, it was illegal to be young. You could be arrested to listening to rock music, growing your hair long, discussing politics. Now I come here and remember my daughter and sit here with all of these students who have never known the oppression, the fear of living under a dictatorship. And one of the other students in our group asked her, like, are you upset the dictators were not punished more? They had trials, but most of the dictators were so old that they were just released to house arrest. They felt it would be cruel for them to die in prison. These people who had systematically killed 30,000 people and deported thousands of Bolivians and other people to surrounding nations. And she told us, like, no, it would have caused so much harm to Argentinian society to take out this cruelty on these dictators. Like, this is their punishment, that we are healing as a country, that my daughter's name is in stone and their names will be forgotten. the police and military are banned from universities and schools in Argentina to protect students' freedom of speech. The military has been defunded and largely cut from political power, which was a constant issue in Argentina. Like, the military would just take over the country every few years. And over 500,000 people who were undocumented were given citizenship in this massive citizenship campaign. So like, the crimes that the dictatorship committed aren't even possible anymore, not because we punished these dictators, but because we repaired our society. And that's like incredible grace to say, I don't want to see these dictators harmed because that would harm our society as a whole. But it's also so practical. And that's what I want people to understand about abolition, is that it is the practical way to respond to harm is to let go of our need to punish people when they've done things that are wrong. And I don't want US soldiers to be hurt anymore. I want them to put their weapons down. I want them to realize that what they have done is wrong. But I know that punishment does not teach right from wrong. Grace does. And I believe that in my soul, and then I still practice punishment. Like a few months ago, my parents did something that hurt my feelings, and I stopped talking to them. I gave them the silent treatment. And it's not productive. It doesn't get us anywhere. It's not a boundary. I was just like, how do I hurt these people who love me and have hurt my feelings? I don't talk to them. All they want to do is talk to me. It's, oh my God, parents just want to talk to you every day. And this is a way that I can get them back, and maybe they'll understand me. And it didn't do anything. It didn't make them understand me. You know, it didn't open a dialogue. If anything, it closed the dialogue. I was thinking, faith is these really big ideas we have about the entire universe and how the world works based on tradition and everyday practices of those beliefs. And like, what are the everyday practices of abolition? Probably not silent treatment, unfortunately. There's a CLF minister who talks about when her kids come to her and say, I want him punished. She says, do you need help, or are you just trying to get someone in trouble? And that's an everyday practice of abolition. Faith formation around abolition is starting to practice these beliefs in our everyday lives so that we believe them, really believe them in our souls, and then can practice them on the large and medium and small scales. And that is the conclusion of my sermon. Thank you so much for listening, guys.
Thank you, Siegrid. I can't see you anymore, but thank you. Siegrid is now on our worship team. You'll all be glad to hear. Generosity is one of our UU shared values. As UUs, we agree to cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We understand that generosity is a spiritual discipline that connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. We can practice our act of generosity either by placing an offering in the collection plate or by using the information on your order of worship on the back, the QR code, to give electronically. Okay.
Siegrid asked if we could do 205, Amazing Grace, in your gray hymnal, and you can remain seated while we sing that.
Thank you for that choice, Siegrid. I have many memories of that song. Gifts to this community of faith are gratefully received. Let us acknowledge these gifts by reading together the words in your order of service. This gift from the abundance of my life blesses me, our ministries, and the world. Giving in the offering plate and pledging are part of the ways that we steward this congregation. There are countless other ways to serve, build community, and share your love with the rest of the city. Here's a few opportunities. People, I'm going to tell you, look at your digest. It is full of opportunities. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis. Today at 12 o'clock, we have a social justice team meeting. It'll meet right here. We'll start about 15 minutes after the service is over. So time to get your coffee and come up here and talk about social justice issues. Tuesday is the board meeting at 7 o'clock. It's on Zoom. Everybody's welcome. Friday is the religious exploration meeting. That also is on Zoom. Social justice is making a new church banner so that so everybody can know who we are when we are marching, say, on No King's Day this Saturday. And if you want to make sure the world knows your UU values, we have a t-shirt for sale. Talk to Ann or look in the digest, and there you can tell everybody those shared values. And Justin, up in the balcony, is offering a sermon writing course. It'll be four meetings on either Wednesday night or Saturday afternoon, depending on the participants' schedules. It'll be on Zoom, and you'll end up with a sermon that you can stand over here and deliver. And we are all invited, specially invited, to a Liberation Passover Seder on April the 3rd. That'll be in Grodat. It'll be outside, but you will remember some of our friends from Jewish Voices for Peace that we hosted a Seder for them a couple of years ago in the old building. So that's why we're specially invited. And we also have scheduled an all-hands Christmas tree planning meeting on April the 8th. That'll be on Zoom. Details in the digest. So, all these details are in the digest. And if you didn't get your digest at 5 p.m. on Friday, talk to me and I'll forward you mine and we'll get you on the list to get the digest, because there's always good things. For a spotlight announcement this morning, I'm going to speak on behalf of the nominating committee. Shavia is the other member of the nominating committee that's here. Our third member of the nominating committee, Steve Bergeron, is home with newborn twins, Genevieve and Jacqueline. I know. And I'm sure Josephine is helping take care of them. So what we're not going to tell you what, but we do need a couple of more people on the board. Please don't think you have to be some power person or some, ultra national born. Talk to me. I can tell you. You just have to be there, be present, and be thoughtful. So don't be shy. If you think you have something to offer by being on the board for the next 2 years, talk to Shavia, talk to me, and we'll tell you about it. I mean, it is more than just go to a meeting and vote, but it's also not particularly demanding. We do, yes, because we're also going to need a chair and a co-chair for the budget drive next year. Now, that sounds so far away, but promise you, we're going to blink and it'll be here again. So we'll need 2 people to guide us through that process, because the budget is what really keeps us going. With that, please stand in body or spirit and join in our chalice extinguishing, which is also in your order of worship. If you'll read with me, please. Oh, would you? This church, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we hold in our hearts until we are together again. And our closing hymn, please remain as you are for our closing hymn, which is in your order of worship, and here it is. Our closing hymn today, is number 345, With Joy We Claim the Growing Light, in the gray hymnal. Folks, friends, beloveds, all y'all, this church has a place in our hearts and a way we live our lives. Wherever and however we gather, we bring and share the spirit of love and life. Let us invite that spirit to fill us now as we enter into this broken world. And coffee and snacks. That way.